You've read the title right, you've had a look at the thumbnail. This is a backcapping guide. Pause the video, this is a flowchart, make it make sense. Backcapping is when you score at the 2-minute mark when you should be at the Rayquaza fight. Now let's walk through this flowchart together. The first question we ask ourselves is, does your team have the lead? And you'll know if your team has the lead when one of these 5 messages comes up on your screen. If your team does have the lead, do not backcap, play passively, and defend your tier 1s. The match is really yours to lose from here. You and your team have put yourself in the position to win the game. You are now forcing the enemy team to engage on the Rayquaza or engage in a backcap, which gives your team the number advantage at the Rayquaza fight. So, if you're in the lead, no need to backcap, play passively, and make sure that you're winning that Rayquaza objective. If you are unsure, if it comes up with a close battle, you do not need to be backcapping. You go to the Rayquaza fight. This is a very, very important objective because the game is already close as it is. Now, if you are losing, you consider, are we losing by less than 100 points? If you are losing by more than 100 points, right, you don't backcap. You go to the Rayquaza fight, right? You've got to wait for that fight to break out. There's a very, very tricky situation, and we're going to have a look at an example of how you can win when you're more than 100 points behind. However, this is when the backcapping kind of flowchart kicks in. Yes, we are less than 100 behind. Is there an enemy tier 1 active? No, then don't backcap. If there's an enemy tier 2, don't walk that far out to try and get that backcap. Okay, there is an enemy tier 1 active. Well, what are we going to do? We go to the Rayquaza and we consider scoring after a mini fight. A mini fight breaks out. So regardless of the situation, guys, we're going to the Rayquaza. Okay, a mini fight breaks out. Did anyone die? Less than 3 people on either team. Let's say 2 people on the enemy team and 1 person on your team. If this is the case, you need to be map aware. Backcapping can swing the refight because there is going to be a refight if only a couple of people die at that Rayquaza. However, if more than 3 people die, let's say 3 people died on your team and 3 people died on the enemy team, then you consider, does the enemy have any rip or secure alive? If yes, then you probably want to go backcap, because if they've got the secure and the rip, you don't want to be ripping that Rayquaza objective. However, if it's no and your team has the rip, then you don't backcap. This is an opportunity for you and your team to potentially secure the Rayquaza, but obviously it's going to be dependent on the situation at hand. Now, with all things considered here, it's best to put you and your team in a position where you do not need to be backcapping. You're forcing the enemy to backcap and you're forcing the enemy to make those riskier plays. How do you do that? Well, thing number 1 is make sure you have an experience lead, and thing number 2 is make sure you have a score lead. And I believe that those 2 things go hand in hand. Now, if you haven't seen this chart before, this is the experience required for you to level up in Pokemon Unite. You've got the experience to the next level and the cumulative experience required. Now, kind of consider this mid-game. Think about what level you are by the 5-minute mark. Generally, it's about level 9, level 10 if your team's doing very, very, very well, maybe level 11. It requires about 6,400 experience for you to reach that level, and if you've got 5 teammates, then let's say that's roughly about, let's say 32,000, 33,000 experience in total. And you might ask, how much experience do you get from scoring in Pokemon Unite? And there's actually a chart for this as well. You get roughly 10 times the number of points that you score in a goal zone. Now, all of this information is from the Unite DB, the MATHCORD. These people are amazing. If you haven't seen them, check them out and consider being a Patreon. They put a lot of time and effort into making these things come true. Link is in the description if you are feeling generous with those guys there. However, if you consider, if your team has got roughly a 200 score lead by that 5-minute mark, you times that by 10, that is a 2,000 experience gap that you have over the enemy purely on scoring. This got nothing to do with the farm that your team has got. It's got nothing to do with how much you've secured, objectives, all that kind of stuff. 2,000 experience purely based on scoring. And to make the numbers nice and easy, if you go back to the original amount, it's about 30,000 cumulative experience for your entire team. That's a lot of experience. That's 1/15. Okay, that's like 7-ish% of your team's experience has come purely from scoring. So not only are you giving your team the experience lead, you're actually going to be giving your team a very, very good position at the Ray fight, because you want to make sure that you are winning, right? You want to make sure that you're winning. You're not putting yourself in the position to backcap. However, the last thing to consider is how much catch-up experience are you giving the enemy when you break a tier 1? Well, farm that they get, let's assume that if you break the tier 1, they're going to take all of their Indeedis. Up on the screen, there's an Indeedee EXP chart. Again, this is all from the MATHCORD. You are giving the enemy roughly about 700 experience per minute if they're farming these Indeedis. Now, 700 experience per minute is roughly about giving one enemy a level per minute. That's the farm that you're giving up for a score lead. Is this worth it? Well, it's probably worth holding out as much as you possibly can. So rather than breaking the goal zone at the 7-minute mark, you might want to break it at the 5-minute mark, or you might want to break it at the 3-minute mark, and you can farm all of the experience in the top lane. So you're maximizing the experience that you get from your team and minimizing their experience that they get. Now let's backpedal to this flow chart here. There's 2 exceptions to this flow chart. Number 1 is if your team has a hooper. If your team has a hooper, it's going to be easier for you to backcap and get into the Rayquaza pit because the hooper has got the portals, right? So that's exception number 1. This is, of course, like everything in Pokemon Unite, is not a one size fits all. So number 1 exception is, does your team have a hooper or does the enemy team have a hooper? Because if the enemy team has a hooper, that makes things interesting as well. Example number 2, or thing number 2 is, does the Regieleki walk in? If your team has secured the Regieleki and it walks into the enemy tier 2, I still don't think it's a good idea to backcap. If it walks into the enemy tier 1, then it's probably a good idea to backcap, but that is a very, very rare situation, and this is probably your only free score that you are going to get as a backcap at this Rayquaza fight. So those are 2 exceptions. Just before anybody else says it in the comments, or if somebody says it in the comments, please timestamp and give them this small section and call them out for not watching the entire video. And guys, if you've made it this far and you've gotten any sense of value from this, please drop a like, drop a comment, let me know how you feel about it. And if you're feeling generous, don't donate to me, donate to the MATHCORD. They give all of this information for absolute free. Again, description down below. Now, without further ado, I'm going to go through a short tier list of who I think you can and shouldn't backcap with, and then we're going to go into some examples of real Rayquaza gameplay where we're going to break down and consider who should have backcapped, who shouldn't have backcapped, and why things worked out well and why things didn't work out well. Now, I just want to talk over this tier list of backcappers for a moment. I've got good backcappers, medium backcappers, and never backcap alone. Look, this isn't like the, the one size fits all. Generally, the good backcappers are the Pokemon with great mobility and they can zip in and out of the fight very quickly. Talonflame's a great example. Greedent, Sableye, Wigglytuff with the rollout, the Dragonite Unite, the Lapras Unite. You can go back in with Shadow Sneak. You've got great mobility on Crustle, and you've got great mobility and speed on your Zoroark. Those Pokemon are decent enough at backcapping and getting into the fight relatively quickly, and also if they get dived on, they're able to get away, so you're not going to be sacrificing your life for the backcap. Unlike these medium backcappers, they've got decent enough mobility, but if they get caught on by maybe 1 or 2 enemies, there's a good chance that you're going to be dying with these Pokemon. So they've got the mobility to get in and out, but they're probably going to be dying after they get stomped on if you're unfortunate enough to be in that position. And then these Pokemon down here, if you're playing these Pokemon, you are not the one who goes to backcap. You are generally either supporting your team with the backcap, or you are staying at Ray to make sure that your team maintains vision so the enemy don't just rip it while 1 or 2 of you are off scoring in their tier 2 goal zones. So pause this, have a look, let me know what you think in the comments. This would be a rough kind of tier list of Pokemon that I would be going off and scoring again after that initial Ray fight.
Pressure di mereka. Mew-nya yang bahkan level 13. Bukan Lapras ya. Lapras masih farming, kita bisa lihat di minimap. Banyak kejar 4 Pokemon. Coba Covid 25 poin dimasukkan, 50 dari seorang Clefable. Hancur Spike Fish dibuka di sini. Start apa sih di sini? Mencoba dan ketonci di sana. 75 poin. Oh, Onyx done it. Oh, 2 poin. Onyx done it.
So the first example I'm going to consider with backcapping here is a Indonesian finals game between Rise and Onyx. This is an absolutely phenomenal game. You can see Onyx is behind by more than 100 points. Have a look at the positioning of Rise. That is the orange team. We've got the Buzzwole on top protecting the tier 1 and the Leafeon on bottom protecting the tier 2. And have a look at the high mobility Pokemon. That is the Zoroark and the Lapras from Team Onyx, looking and scouting for a sneaky little backcap. They're coasting out time, right? They're looking for a bit of vision. The Zoroark goes in for a backcap and realizes that he's going to be stopped by that Leafeon. Now this isn't as simple as just crash a goal zone because Team Rise has the Hooper, so they could just portal the entire team into the central area and they'll be able to rip the Rayquaza and win the game straight away. So Onyx are in a very bad position here. This is very tricky for them. They're playing very patient, they're playing very safe, and so they recognize that two people defending goal zones, they've got the numbers in the middle, so they look to engage a fight, they look to make something break out here. They're tickling the Ray to force Rise into the central area, and they're hitting Ray, they're trying to keep it at about 60% so they could rip it down. Rise pop that Hooper Unite, and as you can see, the Lapras tries to pick off a kill. What Onyx are trying to do here is, in order to get those backcaps in, they need to have the number advantage. They spot that the Leafeon is out by himself, they get the kill on the Leafeon, and now they're in a 5v4 situation, and they know that the main secure from Team Rise is out of control here. So they recognize the time, they're not going to be able to rip. They look to completely bomb a goal zone because they recognize that they've got to defend both goal zones and they're completely outnumbered. And Onyx look to just completely crash this bottom goal zone. They're getting little scores in here, and they recognize that double points, they don't need a whole lot, and the Buzzsaw has to stay top. He has to stay top to stop the 100 score going into the tier 1. The Slowbro does as well as he can, but obviously 30 seconds is just too much time for Rise to hold out. Guys, this is how you backcap in a game. You don't just run aimlessly. You've got to scout vision. You've got to have a look at what's going on. So that is a perfect example of how you can win with backcapping by playing in the last 2 minutes. The second example here is of my personal gameplay. I've pinged to defend the top goal zone. As you're going to see, our team is very ahead. We've played very well for the first 8 minutes of the game. We're looking to play passive and force the enemy to engage. The Machamp gets a huge amount of damage. I have no idea how I've managed to survive this, and my team has done very well to keep me alive. And we're forcing their team to have to score. Their team is looking to crash a pad, which I don't think is the most correct play, but this is not a competitive match. This is a game of solo queue Pokemon Unite. So our team is in the lead and we're in a very good position. This is how I want to do it. You can see I jumped to the top because I don't want their team looking for a backup, and I'm actively panning over the Rayquaza to make sure that their team is not ripping that objective. Our Blastoise is maintaining vision in the mid, and I'm pinging to defend the bottom goal zone. We're playing passive. This is the enemy team's game to try and win. This is our game to lose, right? I'm maintaining vision. I'm making sure they don't get a cheeky 100 in the top and 100 in the bottom, because that would probably make their team win the game. I'm not exactly sure, which is the phrase thing about Pokemon Unite. Their team's looking to float top, so I'm in a perfect position here to try and stall out, to try and make sure that they don't get the kills on us. All I'm looking to do is defend our goal zone to try and get a little bit of kill, and as soon as I see this Dragapult, I launch out all my possible damage. Their team is in a very compromising position. It's very tricky for them. They have to make a play, which means our team can engage on them when they're out of position, when one of them tries to go for a back cap, and that's exactly what happens. We get the team wipe. Guys, this is perfectly played not by me, but my entire team. Our Blastoise looking to give vision, our Zeraora and Blissey looking to stay together and get those KOs, and myself to defend our goal zones and do the big damage when required. Absolutely amazing gameplay from me and my team there. Third and final one here is, you can see it's 2 minute mark. Our team has got the lead. Not a huge lead. We are up by less than 100 points, and I'm playing the Hyper Carry Pokemon. As you can see, the enemy Regieleki has gone into the second tier, so we could have been backcapping. However, that's not the priority. We are looking to make the enemy force to make a play here. I can see that their team is trying to rip the objective, so I eject and I try and force their team back. I don't need to be doing this objective. All I need to do is pressure their rip out, because we're ahead on score. We need to force them to try and backcap, or force them to try and rip so we can out-secure and out-kill them, which is exactly what our team does here. We pretty much get an entire team wipe, except for the enemy Dragapult. We've killed their entire team there. This is a huge misplay from me here. I've looked to rip because I didn't think they had any secure alive. However, it was just me being a little bit silly and not checking to see who was alive. The Venusaur spawned, the Venusaur came through, and he actually was able to get that secure. However, it's not the end of the game here, because only 2 of their team has shield, because 3 people were dead at the time of that Rayquaza, which is Sableye and the Venusaur. Actually, I think one other person got a shield by like a literal microsecond of being alive. So the Sableye gets a 50 score in. The top priority in this situation is break the shield. This is absolutely 100% my fault. I probably should definitely not have ripped there. However, if you're in this situation, you're still in a very winnable position, because remember, you need to get some kills on the enemy, and then as a team bombard their base. Look to fight, and then all stand on the pad and try and get a bit of score in. At this particular stage, we are less than 100 height, so if we get a score in, we're going to be able to win the game. Now, and then a champ goes in and scores 42, so they've got 180 score in, right? But we have had the lead, so we need to score about 150 to equalize it here. right? That's all the score we're going to need. Now, with the Machamp looking to score, that means that their defense is weak, so we can get in. We get a 25 from the Gardevoir and then a 50 from the Gudra, which puts our team back into the lead. Very, very good for us, and that pretty much just it sells the game, right? And that's what you can do. You can only do this if you've got a team that's willing to siege the goal zone with you. However, we never should have been in this position if I just had have defended the goal zone, backed out, and looked to pick enemies off when they came into the Rayquaza pit. It would have been a much less stressful win for our team. So apologies to my teammates if you're watching this video and you're watching this. This is a mistake. However, it is a situational mistake that can happen when you're playing the game. Now, the reason why I've kept this in and I've showed this as a, as a learning experience is because you're not going to be perfect in every single game. These mistakes do happen, and it's something that I reflect and learn on, and I know, these things can happen in the middle of the game, so there's no need to tilt at your teammates when they make a small mistake like this. There you have it, guys, the backcapping guide of Pokemon Unite in your ranked games. Hopefully you get some value out of this. If you did, drop a like, leave a comment, and show me some love. Much appreciated. Share with a friend, and especially share that flowchart with as many members in the community as possible. Let's spread the word. No more just running to backcap at the Rayquaza. Have a very good day, and good luck on that rank grind.